We got baby goats, and these were rejected by their mother, and so we got them days old and had to keep them inside because it was so cold and it was easier for bottle feeding. They did receive colostrum within the first 2 to 3 days, so they received a healthy foundation to build upon. We were so in love and so excited with these babies as soon as we got them, but we were intimidated and a little overwhelmed about the process. Every day we brought them outside to the pasture so they could have access to sunshine and fresh grass. So this has been our indoor goat setup since it's been really cold out. We had a little temperature gauge there, and we had a heater there with some towels. And then when it was getting really cold, like in the 30s, we covered a good bit of this with this tarp. And then I also placed a bale of hay right there. They're only a few weeks old, but just so that they could go in here and nibble it a little bit. But they're not selective about their hay. They'll chew the hay a little bit inside too. So this is just the setup that we started with for our week-old goat babies. These goats are disbudded, which means they will not grow horns. Within 4 to 7 days of birth, a goat will be disbudded with a very hot iron taken to the horns so that way their horns don't grow in. This is different from polled goats, which genetically are not going to grow horns. What you see is their skull, and so there are many things to consider so that way they can heal safely. In the meantime, you want to make sure they stay safe with no sharp objects around or any young puppies that might tackle them. We had one instance in which our Great Pyrenees puppy looked like he had played with the goat and cracked his skull slightly, but there was no blood. This was another instance in which the cap had just fallen off, but this healed on its own very quickly. If you see blood and it's continuing to flow, you should immediately use cornstarch to try to stop the blood flow and contact your vet. People choose to spud their goats for a number of reasons. Normally, because if they're looking to raise show animals, they require no horns. The other big concern is the damage that the horns can do to other goats, to their human companions, and also to themselves. Our goats came to us disbudded, but we appreciate not having horns, especially around our little one. Goats are notorious for squeezing into odd places, and they can get their heads stuck into fencing with horns that leaves them susceptible to predators. The benefits of keeping their horns includes maintaining body temperature as well as self-defense, which would be especially helpful in a large herd. It takes about 10 to 12 weeks for the fur to grow in fully. I'm about to feed the goats their milk bottles, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. Here are some of the materials you're going to need. You're going to need a thermometer, a scale, bottles. We have gone between different bottles. We used these when they were smaller, which we were told would not work, but have worked just fine. This has been our favorite bottle. It's got the measurements on there for ounces, which has been convenient. And it conveniently fits these nipples, which are good for just about any water bottle. We have been using raw cow milk and this probiotic yogurt. We've been using about 1 to 2 spoonfuls of this per goat mixed in with their milk. The very first bottle they get gets a pinch of baking soda to help with digestion first thing in the day. And then from the very get-go, we've been including this DWA, which is a natural dewormer, and this GI soother. And so we've been using both of these in their milk bottles from once a day to 3 times a day, depending on what's going on. There's been a couple of times when they've had diarrhea, and that's because we have changed up their schedule, and I'll get into that in a minute. But if there is a case of upset stomach or coccidiosis, you can do more of these herbs. We've been writing down our schedules on here, and there is a sort of overview schedule that you can use to calculate how many ounces you're giving them, how many times a day. We've been doing this throughout the whole bottle feeding. We use rescue remedy whenever they're going through any major changes that could be stressful. Stress on a goat's gut can increase the amount of coccidiosis parasites. And so whether it is for banding or right now we're weaning them, we use the rescue remedy, and this is good for all animals. You'll also need a double warmer to put inside a pot to heat up your yogurt and milk. You want to heat the milk and yogurt to 103. If it goes above 108, it's going to kill all of the live beneficial cultures. If it's too hot, then put the double boiler under some cold sink water to slowly cool down the milk. We have also used funnels to pour the milk into the bottles until it became more natural to easily pour without spilling. How to feed your goats the bottle. The most important thing you need to know is that they need to latch horizontally, and then once they latch, you bring the bottles up vertically so their necks are stretched upwards. Goats have a complex gut system, including the rumen, a reticulum, omasum, and abomasum. This is important because as this digestive system is developing in baby goats, an easy mistake can happen by feeding the milk directly into the rumen, which is where they are typically processing and fermenting grass and browse. So if you stretch their necks up, you can bypass the rumen and the milk goes straight into their abomasum, which is their true stomach for digestion. When they're done finishing their bottle, they will always act like they are more hungry, but do not give in to this. They can easily overconsume milk and become bloated. It is time to wean the goats. You only want to do this once they've reached 10 to 12 weeks old. And you want to be mindful of any other conditions that might stress them out, because weaning in itself is naturally stressful and it can increase the levels of coccidia parasites in their gut, which can lead to diarrhea, dehydration, and even death. A good time to wean would be when you know the weather is going to be nice and you're not expecting any unforeseen changes in their lifestyle. All of this time, we've been using scraps of paper with schedules and quantities for feeding them, and that has gradually gotten larger, but for weaning, we slowly gave them less ounces every day up until the last day of 4 ounces and 2 ounces. We included all of their usual supplements as well as rescue remedy up until the last day. Now when we go out, we make sure that they have plenty of water and have been giving them extra attention. When we brought our baby goats home, we had a basic understanding of their needs, but there were definitely some trial and error moments. Their first experience of Scours, which is goat language for diarrhea, was extremely concerning according to the books and groups on Facebook. As soon as you see Scours, you need to act immediately in case it is urgent. For us, it ended up being a matter of changing up their feeding schedule too quickly or too much at once. The first time it happened, we put the goats outside during the day and immediately cleaned up their pen. I rushed to give them Probios, which is a pharmaceutical brand of probiotics that had a bunch of nasty ingredients in it and artificial colors, and I thought to myself, why is this necessary? So I turned to just straight up probiotic yogurt and these herbs. The reason why I like these herbs is because they are all natural, they are organic or wild crafted or responsibly sourced. You can use them as a preventative or as a treatment. They're also good for all animals, dogs, chickens, goats, and humans, everyone alike. I also gave them both a dose of Nutrigens, which is just vitamins and minerals and can help replenish their vitamins and minerals if they've had diarrhea, as well as an electrolyte solution made out of just a pinch of salt, baking soda, and a little bit of molasses. On both occasions after these treatments, the animal's poop has returned back to a solid consistency, and I learned how instinctual these animals actually are with their needs. A buckling is a young male goat that has not been castrated. We got our Nigerian dwarf buckling with the intention of having him as a wether. A wether is castrated and is typically great to have with a herd to let you know when your does are in heat, as well as calm the temperament of your overall herd. There are 2 ways to sterilize a male goat. One is surgical castration, which is typically not recommended and done when they're older. The other method is called banding, and it can be done by your breeder or vet, and it entails taking a rubber band around the testicles until they eventually deflate and then fall off. When this procedure gets done depends on the breed of your goat. For a Nigerian dwarf, this should be done anywhere between 8 and 10 weeks of age.